Hello everyone, this is BritSimon. I want to take you through this evening an example entry into the DV lottery so that you can be clear on a number of questions that come up frequently, and I can guide you through a little bit. It's sometimes better to just guide you through and answer some of the questions that I know will come up as you're going through your own entry. So first of all, you should only apply for the lottery, the DV lottery, the Greencard lottery, through one particular site. It's either the dvprogram.state.gov. You can also type in dvlottery.state.gov, and you'll see that that comes back to the same address. It actually comes back to exactly the same thing, DV program. So there's two things that you can type in, but it comes back to the same site. In the site, you'll see that if you've looked at this over the last couple of days, up until today, this top section did not exist. But the Diversity Visa DV2022 opened at noon today, and so now we see some additional functionality on this page. We see firstly a link to the DV2022 instructions, so you can click that, and I really do recommend you go through the instructions here. This is well worth doing to avoid making mistakes. The instructions are in English so far, and I can see they're already adding some of the translations. The translations tend to get uploaded over the coming days. Each year they released these instructions just a few days ago, but click on the link for the instructions itself, right, and go through the instructions. Go through that carefully and make sure you understand the rules, etc. There is also a section in here for frequently asked questions or facts, and so many times I'm told that people didn't know this or they didn't know that, and almost every time I can say with confidence that was in the instructions, that was in the frequently asked questions, and we go through the same conversation every year, and it's unfortunate because people are making mistakes which will disqualify them from the program. So it's really important to just have a read through these questions. I'm going to just briefly cover some of the things that you're going to need to know. The list of countries here is the list of countries that are not able to enter the lottery. Right? There's been a couple of changes this year. You can see, for example, Hong Kong is now included in the description for China. In other words, Hong Kong, up until this year, was allowed to, people born in Hong Kong were allowed to enter. They're no longer allowed to enter. So that's a fairly big change this year. And Honduras is still in, Guatemala is still in, Peru is, still in the list, I should say. So these are excluded countries, right? And so you need to have a look at these countries and understand that if you're born in those countries, then you are ineligible to apply, except for a couple of exceptions, which I'll describe shortly. So then the requirement number one is that you're a native of the countries that are not in this list. Okay, so there's a lot of countries that are not in that list. Those countries, by the way, people often ask, when's Bangladesh going to be back in? When will Pakistan be in? These sort of questions. The reasons these countries are listed and not eligible is that those countries already enjoy over 50,000 people emigrating to the United States each year, or in the previous 5 years. So, in other words, they already have a lot of immigrants to the USA, and so they're not allowed to enter the Diversity Immigrant Visa Program, which was established to promote diversity. Instead of having all of the immigrants in any particular year coming from one particular country, the idea of the DV lottery is to give other underrepresented countries a chance, right? So that's why they're there. So requirement number one is to be from one of those countries and to be born in one of those countries, right? Requirement number two is that you meet a certain level of education or work experience, and it's one or the other. You don't need to meet both, but the description of that is, for education, it's at least a high school education or its equivalent. And they've changed this description a little bit, but basically this is the point at which an American kid going to school can enter university, or college as it's known over here. So you would typically be 18 years old, and you're at the level of education which would allow you to enter into a university. You don't need to have met that level today to enter today, right? You may be, for example, 16 or 17 years old. You may know that you're going to meet that level of education within a few months, and so you could enter today, and as long as you've met that level of education before the interview, then you're good to go. You're allowed to enter the lottery. There is a work experience alternative, which is, basically some jobs qualify, some jobs don't, and you've got to have 2 years experience in a qualifying job within the last 5 years. So it's a professional level of work. Okay, and they say here you shouldn't submit an entry to the DV program unless you meet both these requirements. In reality, it's up to you. If you want to enter the lottery, you can do so, even if you feel you don't meet those requirements, or if you're not sure, you can enter the lottery anyway. But obviously, if you're selected and you cannot meet those requirements, then you're going to be disappointed later on. Okay, so that's the requirements section. Now, as we go down, there's a little bit of information about the types of information you're going to need to provide. You're going to need to provide all of this information, but we'll be going through an entry in a few moments, so I'm going to talk through that as we go. Let's see what else here. Yeah, all of that is on the entry form. I'll talk about that later. It then describes how entries are selected, etc. It talks about the digital photograph. There is also, if you look back on the page here, there's a link for photo examples. And in that photo examples, it gives an indication of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. For example, this is the sort of standard image that they want. The photo is clear, it's in color, it's the right size. The subject of the photo is looking at the camera, both eyes open, faces unobscured, etc. And so, that gets a green check. And then there are different examples here of what's not acceptable. So, for example, eyeglasses are not acceptable. You can't have sunglasses, you can't have reading glasses, you have to have no glasses, right? That rule was changed. The size and position of the photo is important. The size and position of you in the photo is important, and so this is the sort of composition you need to have, and you can't be off to one side, you can't be all head, no shoulders. It's the composition they're looking for is like this. Okay, a little bit of shoulders, a little bit of head, but don't freak out about this too much. There is a sort of there is a percentage-based formula for how your face needs to fit within a certain place, and I can't remember offhand, it's something like 68%, and and people sort of talk about that, or 1 inch and 1.4 inch, etc. If you're 1.41 inches, or if you're 0.99 inches, etc., that's okay. It's not an absolute finite tolerance. It's just that the composition of the photo is accurate. The resolution is important. There shouldn't be big shadows or obvious sort of pixelated photos. This is poor quality. Shouldn't be a blurry photo. And it shouldn't be undersized, right? It should be a 2 inch by 2 inch at 600 dpi. 300 dpi. It should be 600 by 600 dots actually, pixels. Yes, you shouldn't this particular one is about digital alterations. The problem with this photo is that clearly someone has clumsily cut out the background. A little bit of sort of selective touching up of a white colored or a light colored background is okay, but in this case this person's head has been changed in shape by clumsy editing. That's not okay. And so, it clearly is a digitally altered photo. This they're saying is okay. The image has not been altered. This poor man's head has been squeezed. That's not okay. And this particular one has red eye. That's not okay. Red eye happens when you're using a flash, so try and avoid using a flash if you can. Okay, so that's the expression they're looking for. They're not looking for, the picture of someone's top of their head. You need to be looking at the camera, face on. You shouldn't be having such a great time that you're having a party. They want, a fairly serious, normal expression. They don't want to see under your neck. They want to see you looking face on. This is okay. It's a gentle. This one's a gentle smile. It's not bad. You don't have to be grumpy, right? Like this guy. You can have a gentle smile, but not crazy. Don't tilt your head too much. But again, I had someone ask me a question the other day. Their head was, a few degrees off, just a couple of degrees off to one side. Don't overstress that. It's not a problem. This guy, I mean, frankly, his hairdo, he shouldn't be allowed in America. But the problem with this is that he's not face on to the camera. His shoulders are not face on to the camera. And then this lady fell asleep, so she's not getting in. And just attire, hats, and hair, they've got a bit on that. So the first photo is okay, right? Because her face is fully unobscured. The second photo doesn't work because her head covering covers too much of her face. Okay, that's the problem there. Same thing with the scarf. I don't know what she's trying to hide with that. Shouldn't be wearing a hat. Shouldn't be wearing a hat at all. This one's hair, this lady's hair is covering half her face. That's not good. And background should just be plain. It shouldn't be, shouldn't be with a window behind or anything like that. It shouldn't be multicolored or heavily colored. It should be just a plain neutral color, preferably white, but it doesn't have to be exactly white. Okay. Babies, it's not okay to hold babies. So I get asked this every year as well. The way to take a photo of a newborn baby is to place the baby lying down on a white sheet, something like that. Get the babies to sort of look up at you, be above the baby, and take a photo from being above the baby, looking down at the baby. Sometimes babies won't open their eyes. I have suggested in previous videos, and I'll suggest it again, if you make a loud, get the camera ready, make a loud noise, the baby will of course open their eyes, and for a brief moment you've got a great chance of a photo while they open their eyes and looking at what the heck just happened. The baby will then burst into tears. I'm a granddad to 6 children, I know all about that. But you're on your own at that point. You can sort that out. Okay, so that's photos. So I've covered the instructions. I've talked about the photos in a fair amount of detail. So let's start an entry. We'll actually go through an entry process, and hopefully this will work for me. I'm not quite sure if it will, but we'll see. Now, I will sort of tell you this information at the top here. Estimated burden 30 minutes. That means, and you'll see this on government forms, it means they expect you to not have to spend more than 30 minutes on filling this form in. Frankly, you shouldn't need to spend more than 5 or 10 minutes on filling in this form for a single person. If you're prepared and ready, it should be quite quick. Don't worry about this other stuff, and don't worry about expiry dates, etc. It's not relevant right now. So just don't worry about that. And in general, you can ignore this sort of information on government forms. Right, so you've got to type in an authentication code, right? So KVT 3K5SU. Okay, so you've got to type that in, and as long as you get that right, you'll be at the first point, right? So we're going to go through an entry, and I'll do an entry as me, and I'll create a spouse and a child, just to show you how you enter for the family as well. Okay, so I'm going to say my last name is Britton. I do this each year, so let's just do that. Simon is my first name, and for the purposes of describing this, I'm going to say I have no middle name. Right, so people have been asking me, can I type in NFU, or NFN or something like that? NFU meaning no, or first name unknown or something like that. But you don't have to do that. You just click the checkbox, right? So if you have no middle name, click the checkbox to say you've got no middle name. Your last name should be the family name. Sometimes people get confused with this, but it's in Western countries, it typically is the family name that everybody shares. So I might have siblings called Mark and Matthew, and they would both be Matthew Britton and Mark Britton, right? It's a family name that we all share, and it would have come from my father and mother. In some Spanish countries, they tend to have a double-barreled name, so they could have Britton Lopez, for example, and in that case, you would actually put Britton Lopez like that. I would still be Simon Britton Lopez, right? And in some countries, as I say, the family name comes from the father and the mother. The second name tends to be from the mother, and so it's possible that my siblings would have different names, but you get the idea of it. It should be fairly simple, but I'm just going to enter as Simon Britton, right? I'm male. It's not too bad to enter that. You can put the month. Let's see if it's looking for a July. No, it's looking for an 07, 01. Let's say I'm born in 1980. Okay, which makes me, I don't know how old, but younger than I actually am. Birth city. Let's say I was born in Madrid. Okay. Now, if you're born in a small town, sometimes the small town is near a region or near a larger city. Sometimes you might be entering that the name of that city. But generally, have a look on your birth certificate and see what's written on your birth certificate. Some people are surprised they're born in a different place than they expected. So have a look there. And if you're not sure, you can ask a family member. But as long as you get that pretty close, it's important where that city or town is. But at the same time, they're really looking for the country that town belongs in, right? So that's what they're looking for here. So it's asking for birth city, and obviously, if you're born in a little village, put the village name, assume that's like the city, but don't necessarily don't go and put these sort of regional descriptions, district, county, province, or state. That's too broad a description. They're looking for the town or the city name, or the village perhaps. Country where you were born. You can type in the first letter of the country. I'm going to say Spain. Spain is actually, you know what? I'm going to change this. Let's say I'll explain a different way to enter. But let's say I was born in London, right? And London, as we know, is not eligible to enter. So just to explain one of the exceptions I mentioned earlier. Because I was born in London, because I was born in the United Kingdom, I shouldn't be able to enter the lottery. But I'm going to be able to claim eligibility through my spouse because she was born in Spain, right? So it says here, are you claiming eligibility based on the country where you were born? I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to click, and select Spain in a moment. But read this important note. Normally, your country of eligibility is the same as your country of birth, right? This is absolutely critical that you get this right. If you're born in Spain, or if you're born in Morocco, or wherever you're born, it's very important that you list that accurately. It's not to do with where you live, it's not to do with your citizenship or your passport or whatever you hold today. It's about country of birth, and that generally is, for most people, it's as far as they're going to go. They're only going to have to answer question number 5, because they would normally come in here and say, no, I'm not. It says here, are you claiming eligibility based on the country where you were born? You can say yes or you can say no. But if you say yes, you don't get to pick another country here. So, that in that case, I would actually become ineligible to enter the lottery at this point if I don't make a change there. But put your real country of birth, and then if you're eligible through marriage, you can see some more options there. So in this case, I'm gonna select Spain at this point. Let's go there, Spain. Right. So please do read this, and if you like, you can go to the explanation here. It's going to bring you back to the explanation of country of eligibility. But what it's basically going to say is that for 99.9% of you, almost all of you, you're going to be eligible purely because of where you were born, nothing else, right? And the only exceptions that you should think about using are if you're from an ineligible country, as I am, right? If you're born in the UK, or you're born in China, or you're born in Bangladesh, but you happen to be married to someone today already, before you do this entry, you're married to someone from an eligible country, then you can select their country of eligibility, right? You can also use this if you were born in an ineligible country, but your parents were in that country temporarily only, and they're both from different countries, right? In other words, not that country. So an example of that would be, let's say I was born in the UK, but my parents are actually from France and Germany. Because they're not from the UK, and let's say I could prove, and I have to be able to prove this, I could prove that they were only in the UK temporarily, then I could claim one of their countries of birth as being my country of chargeability, right? That's the other exception. The last exception I'll talk about is for someone that's born in a eligible country. Let's say you're born in France, but you're married to someone from Australia. You may be better off choosing the country of eligibility as being Australia through marriage, in the way I described earlier, but not because your country of birth is ineligible, just because it's actually in this case just because you're trying to improve your chances of selection, because people in Australia have a higher chance of selection than people in France, let's say, which is the reality actually. All right, so that's country of chargeability covered there. All right, so we're going to put the name on the passport. Now it's very important you must currently possess a valid, unexpired passport from your country of nationality, right? If you have two passports, you can, and you've got effectively two nationalities, you can use either one of those passports. It doesn't matter which one you enter with, and the passport you enter with doesn't necessarily have to be from the country of birth, right? It could be a different passport, but it needs to be an unexpired passport on the day you enter the lottery. Right? Now, if it's expiring in a week's time and you enter today, that isn't a problem. Okay? So please don't ask me if your passport is expiring in 2021 or it's expiring in 2022. I don't care. It's not a problem as long as it's as unexpired as of the day you enter the lottery. Right? You don't have to worry about that if you've got an unexpired passport today. Now, there are people that don't have a passport because of some absolutely technical reasons, so real reasons. They're absolutely unable to get a passport. they come from a country which is refusing to issue passports, not because of COVID or because it's inconvenient or because of whatever, but because they come from a country, and it's described in the rules as a communist-controlled country where you can't actually get a passport. And the other exception is where you're stateless. You could be stateless. But unless you're in one of those very, very narrow sets of exceptions, please, make sure you use a valid passport. And if you haven't got your own valid passport, then don't enter the lottery. Okay, so if you can get a passport, if you enter the lottery and you win the lottery, and you said you didn't have a valid passport because you couldn't get one, you try and claim one of these exemptions here. If you then can turn around and get a passport in a couple of weeks or a couple of months or whatever because you won the lottery, it proves that you were not able to claim one of these exemptions. And so you're going to get disqualified, right? Because you didn't follow the rules. So, don't even bother doing that. Get a passport or just enter next year. Do something like that. Okay, so let's just I'm going to put in a passport number here. X 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. I think that should be enough. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. Needs another one. Needs an 8. Right. So that's it should accept that as a passport format. We'll see. And let's say, so we're going to say my passport is going to expire in the month 07. The day will be 01, and the year I'm going to say 2021, right? So it's only July of next year, but I'm not worried because I'll be able to get a new passport in due course, but it's actually valid today. That's the most important thing. And then this is going to be the UK again. I'm from the UK, so this is going to be a British passport. And I'm not going to claim any of these exemptions. I'm going to use my actual passport. That's what I'm saying there, right? Okay, so now we can have a look at photos. I'm going to select a photo, and let's see, where am I at? I'm going to do here, data, immigration. Okay. And I've been playing around with some photos, so this is going to be me. It's not me, obviously, but there you go. So in care of, you normally would leave blank, right? You don't need to worry about that. And then you'd say your address and your city and county is Alameda. Whoops. So then and postal zip code, again, I get a lot of questions. We don't have a postal zip code in my country. Okay, don't put one in then. Just put no postal zip code, no big deal. But, just enter this. Now, if you happen to be out of your country of birth, if you're in the USA, if you're in Australia, if you're in France, or if you're in whatever country you're in, just put your details in. It doesn't matter where you enter from. Where you enter from has no bearing on your selection one way or the other. Okay, so I'm going to say here I'm in the USA. There. And that's absolutely fine. No problem there. Country where you live today, USA. There you go. Phone number, optional. I'll leave that out. You can put that in if you want. And me at aol.com. Put that in again. Me at aol.com. Okay, now select one of these. Again, this is another question that people just constantly ask me about. And the normal question is, I'm in college now. I expect to graduate next year. Shall I put down university degree? No, you would put down some university courses because you haven't graduated yet. You haven't got your degree yet. So whatever is the truth today, just put that down there. Now, you would still get selected if you put primary school only. Okay, you can still get selected. You're not going to be disqualified. Whatever you put in one of these options, doesn't matter what you pick. This is not a knockout question for the lottery selection process. The selection process is completely random, but just put whatever makes sense, right? So let's say some university courses. Marital status. This is a really big deal. You must listen to this very carefully and you must get it right, okay? You can say that you're unmarried if you have never been married, okay? And for a lot of you that will be the truth, but do not pick unmarried if you have either ever been married or if you're married now. It doesn't improve your chances to lie. If you lie, you will be disqualified. So you must be honest on this particular question as an absolute rule. So you can say you're unmarried or you're married and your spouse is not a US citizen or lawful permanent resident, or you're married and my spouse is a US citizen. So the difference between these two married questions is that if I pick this one, I say I'm married and my spouse is not a US citizen or LPR, then I'm gonna have to add that spouse's details to my form. And if I don't, well, firstly I wouldn't be able to submit. But let's say I think, I haven't got my spouse's photo, so I can't add her, right? And so I'm just going to say I'm unmarried. No, that will guarantee that you'll get disqualified, right? So if you don't have your spouse's photograph, just stop your entry right now, come back and do it another day, okay? If you pick divorced, you're going to be asked for legal divorce papers. You have to be able to show that you've been divorced. If you pick widowed, you're going to be asked for death certificate of your spouse, your previous spouse, right? And if you put legally separated means you've been to court and a court has agreed to note your status as separated. And you've got to be a little bit careful with that one. Don't pick that unless you've actually been to court. It doesn't mean you can't pick that one if you just live apart. You just decided with your spouse to live apart from each other, right? So if you and it says here, if you and your spouse are legally separated, your spouse will not be able to immigrate with you through the DV lottery program. You will not be penalized if you choose to enter the name of your spouse from whom you are legally separated, right? So you can click this little button and enter the information, right? Or you don't even need to enter the spouse information if you have legal paperwork that shows you're separated. So and it says here, if you're not legally separated by a court order, then you must include your spouse even if you plan to be divorced before you apply for the DV lottery, for the DV visa, right? So, and it says here, failure to list your eligible spouse is grounds for disqualification. I can tell you it's more than grounds for. It's 100% certain you will be disqualified if you don't list your spouse or if you don't list your children. 100% certain. I have never, in 7 years of doing this, I've never known any other decision but disqualification for people that leave off their spouse or their children. Okay, so I'm going to say I'm married. I'm going to say I have one child. Now, with children, they're saying here, include all biological children. That's easy, right? Legally adopted children and stepchildren who are unmarried, right? So this is the first part. So you need to include your biological children, adopted children, and stepchildren. Stepchildren are the children of your spouse through another relationship. Okay, so you are the stepchild. You didn't have to do any adoption or anything else. You have stepchildren simply by marriage. Okay, so it's very important that you think about whether you've acquired stepchildren. Now, you may have married someone who has children through another relationship or another marriage, but those children don't live with you. It doesn't matter. You still need to include them on your application. And again, you're going to need to provide photos. And so again, if you can't provide photos, don't proceed. Just wait until you can get photos, or don't enter this year. It's as simple as that. So if the children, if you have any of those sorts of children, and they're unmarried and under the age of 21 on the date you submit your entry, you must include all those children, right? And it says you must include all eligible children, even if they do not live with you, or if they do not intend to apply for the DV visa as your derivative. Right? And again, it says here, failure to list all eligible children is grounds for disqualification. Again, I can tell you 100% of the time, this will result in disqualification if you do this wrong. Okay, 100% of the time. Don't even think about doing this wrong. Okay, because you will get it's absolutely heartbreaking. People think, oh, I can fix that later, right? Or somebody tells you can fix it later, you can do something. You can't do anything. There's no way around this. So what's gonna happen is you're gonna win the lottery. You think your life has been changed, and then you're gonna waste all the time and money, and you'll be disqualified at the interview because you have a child or a spouse that you didn't list on your original entry. So you will get disqualified, no doubt about it. Okay, so that's me. I've put, oh, wonderful. I've taken too long to do that, perhaps. So let me just go through and do that again. Thank you, American government. But we'll see. Sometimes this happens with the sites here because they get overwhelmed. But maybe it's because I took too long. We'll see. So I'm just going to go through that application again, and I'm not concerned about having a dual entry here or a double entry because I didn't actually submit it at any point. I didn't get a confirmation number, so I'm sure that I don't have a problem there. I didn't actually submit. 1980, I think I was going to say 1980. Good. We're going to say London. We're going to say UK. Here I'm going to pick Spain. So you can see if you know everything you're going to answer, you can go through this process very quickly. Where's Spain? There we go. There's Spain. Name on passport. It's going to be Britain. First name Simon. Oops. Middle name, no middle name. What did we say before? 07, 01, and 2021. Oh dear, there we go. Country of issuance, going to be the UK again. Oh, and that's a useful thing. I'm using a mouse that has a little wheel, and be very careful when you're selecting. So I can select here. Now I've selected United Kingdom, but I spin the wheel, and sometimes it will change the value here. So be very careful with that you're not changing the value inadvertently. Choose my photo. Here I am in care of. Didn't want to put anything there, so 123 any street, Livermore, Alameda, 94550. Country is USA. USA there. Okay, so that's my postal address in the country, and then this is the country where I live today. I'm confirming that I live in America. That's fine. Me at AOL.com. Same again there. I'm going to say some university courses. Again, it doesn't matter. Married with one child. Continue. Let's see if that works. Yeah. At least one data validation occurred. Let's see. Passport number X. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so it tells you, it gave me an error, and it showed me in red where the problem was, right? And I'd skipped the passport number. Everything else stayed, I think. It looks like everything else stayed there, so that's good. That should have resolved the problem. Yep. Okay, so derivative. So my spouse, I'm going to say, is also called Britain. Let's call her Mary. Let's say Mary has no middle name as well. Birth date, we'll say she's born in June. 06, let's say 01, and let's say I like a few years younger, and female. I could, America respects same-sex marriage, so if I was married to a male, if I'm a male married to a male, or a female married to a female, as long as that marriage is legal in the country where I got married, then America will respect that that relationship, okay, and that marriage, okay, so no problem there. Let's say Madrid, birth city only, country is going to be Spain, and I need a photo. Let's see, who am I going to get married to? I'll be married to her. Child is going to be Jane. Oops, family name, sorry, Britain. Let's say Jane. We'll say no middle name. Actually, we'll give Jane Mary. Okay, so, just for a bit of variety, I'm not going to click the no middle name, but so this is how you would put in a middle name, a first name, and then the family name, right? And the birth date for our daughter, let's say she was born on May the 1st, always the 1st, and she is, let's make her young, 2010, right? So, we're talking about a child there. Female, birth city, let's say Madrid, country where the child was born. This does not affect eligibility in any way. It doesn't matter where she was born. The child doesn't make any difference at all, right? It's the eligibility and the whole thing is based on my country of birth, or in my particular case, my spouse's country of birth, because we're charging to Spain through my spouse. Okay, so a slightly old looking 10-year-old or whatever that is, but I'm going to continue that. Okay, so I've rushed through that, but you can see it's very easy to to submit all that information. The system's now checking my information, and I get a nice little error, which is wonderful. Hopefully you won't get this error. I wonder if I can resubmit. Probably not, no. Okay, I'm going to pause and recreate this. JK8. Okay, so now I'm back in my form. I've got to the next page, and let me just complete this. It's giving me information to go through and confirm all of my information. So there is all my information. I'm happy with all of that, so I want to go ahead and submit. Now I've got my confirmation number here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a copy of this information exactly. So I've just done a Control-C, and I'm going to email myself that information. Okay, just for now I'm going to put that in a notepad entry, and I'm going to email that information to myself, because this confirmation number for some reason confuses people constantly. And they get it wrong. So all of the information that I've got here is going to be important. You'll see that the system has registered my last name before the comma, and my second name, my actual given name, is after the comma. The last name is the information here, the name before the comma. So I'm going to need the last name, the confirmation number, and the year of birth to be able to check my entry in May of next year. Okay, now unless you see this message here, the entry received success, and unless you've got that information, then you didn't submit your form correctly. If the system goes wrong, as it did for me a couple of times in the making of this video, then you just go back and re-enter all your information. Try and be fairly quick, and actually avoid having lots of windows open like I've done here. You should just try and keep the number of windows down to the minimum, so you don't have all these extra tabs open. It can somehow affect the system. If you're finding difficulties with Internet Explorer, try Chrome, try Firefox, see a different browser and see if that will work better for you. Okay, but ultimately this is the information you want to have, and you ideally at this exact point take a screenshot of this confirmation page, but better yet, the absolute best idea is to copy this information just as I have here into I did it into Notepad, but now email yourself that information. Send yourself an email, right? And then you'll know exactly what you entered. Okay. Now, the other thing I would say is you won't be able to check the information that you entered. So if on that confirmation page, just before you submit, you want to take a copy of all of that and email yourself that information, that's worth doing as well, because sometimes people make a mistake on the information like the country of birth or whatever, and they're convinced they did it right, and in those cases it would be helpful if they had an extract that shows exactly what they entered just before they press enter, submit. Just for their own peace of mind, really. Okay, so we covered a number of topics there. It's a fairly long video. It actually doesn't take more than a few minutes to enter this information, but of course I've talked through a number of topics and a number of errors that I want you to avoid. So I hope that was useful. That's my 2022 entry made. I obviously don't need it. I've got a green card already, but I do this each year so that I can demonstrate to you how the entry happens. Okay, so I hope that was useful, and good luck with your entry. Please, as you complete your entries here, make sure you subscribe to my channel. Give me a thumbs up, like on this video if you like this. But also, remember that I will help you through every stage of the way. So when you're selected, hopefully next year in May, you'll be able to keep coming back to my channel and get information on how to process your case. And I'll help you all the way through. So go ahead and just subscribe to my channel now and keep up with information about the lottery. All right. Thanks everyone. Have a good night. Bye-bye.